Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the podcast where we're moving the conversation forward about the choices you make in your daily life. I'm your host, Monica Cox, and I'm here right alongside of you, learning, growing, observing, and trying to make better choices consciously and subconsciously. Together, we're going to become better versions of ourselves and have raw, honest, open conversations about the things that truly affect our lives. And maybe, just maybe, finally get to a place where everyone else's BS doesn't trigger us. Hi, Joy. Welcome back to the podcast. You were last on with Jacqueline, and we had such an amazing conversation about your own personal journey of healing, balancing life, and a diagnosis of cancer. And we got a little bit into it last time in the podcast, but we didn't, over talk about it. But the balancing of life and motherhood and business and healing, no matter what you're healing from, whether that be physically, mentally, emotionally, and what that roller coaster is like on this planet. So welcome. I'm so excited to talk about this with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And I think I asked my husband last night in preparation for this podcast, what kind of mother am I? It's nice to be self-reflective of like what those around you, how they see you or how they experience you. And I also asked my kids some questions on the way to school. When I'm driving my kids to school, it's always an opportunity to talk to them about real life stuff because I have them like all in the car and they can't get away. So I always talk to them about like their health and like stuff like that they would maybe not normally want to listen to. But we have some really good conversations on the way to school. But my husband said, he's like, and I asked him, I said, how has my healing journey changed me as a mother? He said, he's like, you're more fun. He said, you have more gratitude and you're more in the present moment with the kids. So I think I definitely, through my healing journey, there was a lot of down times where I needed to rest after surgery and then going through chemo. I was determined for them to not just experience me resting, but for them to us to still have fun. So we had a lot of fun. We did 5 minutes of fun. My oldest son said, hey, Mom, we're going to do 5 minutes of funny every day. And so that really helped me get through. We would watch just something funny on TV for 5 minutes. We did a lot of like swimming. We would jump on the trampoline. So I bought a trampoline. So we would do that to the lymph flow. So it's kind of like multitasking, right? Getting my lymph flow on the trampoline while jumping with them. We'd always turn on music and we would always jump in the pool after that with music, family time. So yeah, I think the journey has made me a lot more intentional with spending a lot of quality time with my kids. And even if I can't spend maybe as much time with them, I think the healing journey taught me that it's just, I can like carve out really intentional times where I'm really present with them. And it doesn't have to be, these long periods of time. So yeah, those are some things that helped me. What are your main challenges with being a mom and a business owner with your own business? What do you
Oh
what are your
God, well, yeah, it's a different story now. I mean, if you would have asked me this, what, 3 years ago? I mean, I think it comes down to, and I know that you probably experienced this in your own journey, is that kind of wake up call of how you're actually moving through life, right? And being radically self-honest of, am I showing up the way I actually want to be showing up, or am I running the same patterns that potentially my mom was, or my dad was, or my caregivers were? So now my pitfalls are still just catching myself in the overdoing.
Yes, when you are an entrepreneur and
Yeah.
you are creative and you have all these business, like creativity and vision and passion for what you do, which I see that so much in you. And I see that so much in myself. Sometimes we can get so like, oh, and I can do this, and then I can do this with my business. And so I think the challenge for us that are entrepreneurs that have that drive, right, is to be able to carve out very specific intentional times, right?
Well,
So
yeah. And I mean, I watch this, like if you have a parent who still works, my mom just retired. And so I've watched her my whole life working. But there was like a certain stage where the 9 to 5 became the 6 to 8. And that's how our businesses work. Even my husband works for a company, but he's still like checking his emails and, oh, um this pilot needed this or this student needed that, and like you're off the clock. And like I think a lot of us in this modern age just aren't off the clock.
yes,
And
yes,
that's the hard part is like, oh, well, the kids are just engaged in like, even if it's like they get their screen time, then I jump on my screen and then I get involved. I'm like, oh, mommy needs 30 more minutes, 30 more minutes, And it
yes.
is that being intentional of like, no, like none of this, you obviously have to show up. I'm not saying like, I'm not one of those persons who thinks you can work a 5-hour work week and build a business. No, like that is a lie. But I also know that the computer needs to be shut off. And luckily, I'm not tied to my phone for my work. So when my computer gets shut down, that's it. So that's like one of the biggest challenges for me, and it really just comes back to the patterns that we're running. And uh, unfortunately for most of us, it takes something big to smack us in the face and say like, hey, is this how you really want to move through your life? And I know that you saw your mom suffer and go through her own journey for 5 years. How did
Mhm.
that play into your life before and after as well? Do you see that time differently now through your own journey?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, when you face your mortality and you've also watched a parent, your mother go through what she went through of suffering, it makes you so much more in the present moment. You realize that each moment is a gift. And when your little 5-year-old is like, hey, mom, let's do a puzzle. And your creative brain is like, oh man, I'd like to figure out something for social media or work on my business or something. I tend to be more like, yes, I'm going to do that with you. Like, that's more valuable than anything I can be doing. Like, understanding like priorities, right? Like our family definitely comes first. That I've been a lot more intentional with that and really being more present. Like when I'm present with him, I'm trying not to think like, oh, I can still be thinking about my business in the back of my mind of the creative next thing I'm going to do or something like that. I try to just like really get down on his level on the floor and just really soak it in because I mean, it's crazy, but yeah, we only have the present moment. That's the only thing that's guaranteed to us. So it does shift your perspective. And then like I have more gratitude. Like when I wake up and I can move and feel good in my body and I'm like, I feel incredible and I have good energy. I really appreciate that. And I take advantage of that and like play with them and stuff. Um, I think like what you touched on earlier, doing your own work, like when you said you've been doing like you do work to process like how you were raised in your childhood and how with that all that plays into it. I think doing counseling and really focusing on my own mental health has been really kind of incredible too. Cause like to then think about how did I feel growing up and what did I need more of or want more of? And I think for me, I felt like my parents were extremely loving. They donated their times at a their time at a children's home. So I grew up at my great grandparents founded a children's home and my mom cooked and she did cook meals for 100 people, 3 meals a day and serve the kids. And my dad was like doing all this office work and they were very loving, but I do remember feeling like there wasn't a lot of talk about emotions. And so now that's coloring how I am with my kids. Like they watched me go through suffering and a hard time, but they also watched me find joy and fun and play and pleasure in the midst of grief and suffering. And so I hope that that was a model for them that like you can experience joy and grief all on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of my new coaching program that I'm putting together as I step more virtual with my business. It's kind of, I'm birthing a new business right now, to helping people go through grief and suffering, right? With looking at like the roles of identity, play, and pleasure through grief and suffering. So kind of them showing them like, yeah, you can still move your body when you're going through something tough. You can focus on your mental health. Being more present for my kids and their emotional needs, and letting them know that it's okay to feel whatever they're feeling has been a big one. I think before I had a night, like I felt more shame and judgment about having a hard time mentally or needing to take a break. And now I feel like I'm more apt to just go do those things for myself that I know that I need. Like for my healing journey, I realized that I'm one of those people that needs daily movement. So I show up so much better for my kids when I'm exercising daily, and I carve out my time. So I'm very like, I have my workout times. I've got counseling that I do. I like to reflect in the morning about before I start my day. So I really developed more systems in my life from my healing journey that helped me show up better for work, for my husband, and for being a mom. But wasn't always like that. I mean, it took, like you said, it took like some really hard things to get to the point now where I'm like, and even carving out time, like I just started taking tango. Like, I think it's important for kids to see us doing what we love and doing things that we're passionate about. And my middle son, when he saw we went salsa dancing, he was like, "Hey, mom, are we going to go salsa dancing again? Are you going to go? Are you going to take me?" And I thought about that and reflected about that later. I was like, why was that? Why was he so pushing me to go do that? Even when I was tired, it was like, he liked seeing me lit up, doing what I love and getting filled. So I think it's important. Like, I think that a lot of moms struggle with like the guilt of taking time for themselves. That's like probably the one or a really big recurring theme, right? And so it's like, I think the healing and cancer journey for me just allowed me to do that more, asking for help, right? Not being guilty about taking time for my mental health, and my physical health and all that. I don't know if I feel like I'm rambling. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Well, to go back, right, to your parents being loving parents, I think a lot of people can relate to this. You know, there kind of seems unnecessarily, but it is what it is, that there's like, okay, people grew up with like big traumas, like they could see them, feel them, describe them. And then there's people who grew up in loving environments, but also had a lot of neglect and their needs not properly met because their parents were seeking their self-worth in something else,
Yeah.
right? Whether that be a charity, whether that be their work, whether that be alcohol, like whatever it is. And that was a big thing for me too. Is like, well, I had a pretty cool childhood. It was chill, like I don't have any, I feel very blessed to not have any big traumas like society wants to label them. So I didn't really understand where all my bullshit came from. Like, it was very hard for me to piece together. And then it's that kind of guilt. Well, like, I didn't have that. So why am I feeling this way? And just recognizing your own journey, because there is, if we take out like the environmental factors that we cannot control, like I met a woman who had breast cancer, and it was because she lived in a house with like some kind of crazy radiation in Colorado that happens naturally in the soil, right? It wasn't attached to any kind of trauma from her mom or dad, or like, the way she ate, anything like that. But at the same time, there's a lot of times that kind of those diseases sneak up on us because we aren't processing the BS, right? And you're in acupuncture right now, and I know you've seen a lot of fertility clients, and I still to this day, it's just never going to stop. They're so type A, they're so overdoing, they're seeking their worth outside of like, really, most of them don't have big traumas. But we're not as a society, and I think we're getting there. It's definitely talked about more, but honoring that and unpacking that for ourselves, because it does show up in motherhood. We do start running the same patterns that our parents ran, and we don't have that connection with our children. We're running these successful businesses. We're go, go, go. And I even had a friend once say, um, not that she, her kids didn't have a present figure in their life because they were both working very full time. And she said, but isn't it important for them to see their mother work? And like, I didn't have anything to say to her without getting into a big discussion of like, possibly, possibly yes.
Mm,
But when you don't have one main carer, and I'm not saying it always has to be the mother, it could possibly be the father too. But if you have two people who are ships in the night,
mm-hmm.
they don't have anything. They ain't seen shit other than you're not there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they start internalizing that into self-worth. And I mean, I've unpacked this because I lived it. Like,
Yes. Yes.
my parents both worked 7 to 5. So I was the kid in daycare at 6:30 in the morning and not picked up till 5:30 at night.
Mm,
And no matter whether your parents have to work to just pay the bills or they're working that hard to be multimillionaires, it's the same thing to a kid. It doesn't matter,
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
right?
I think connection over perfection, as I was kind of thinking about this talk, that kind of came up for me because I'm a recovering perfectionist and
Mm-hmm.
I will go as far away from perfectionism as I possibly can now. Being trained as a classically trained violinist from the age of 5, my parents always wanting me to go be on stage and feeling really nervous and shy because I'm an empath and an introvert. So I think that connection, even if you are a person that has to work 9 to 5 or whatever, there's still ways to connect in the evening and connecting and not looking for it to be a perfect scenario or perfect way and just accepting what is. I was talking with a colleague of mine, the co-owner of New Moon Center for Wellness, Fertility, and Pregnancy, where I'm co-owner. My colleague, her and I met in acupuncture school in 2006, and we're really good friends. And we were just talking yesterday between clients about just keeping each other accountable with just putting away our phone, like not checking Instagram constantly, not checking our email constantly. And I have been feeling just like that gets in the way of the connection with my kids. And I
Mm-hmm.
know for me, when I'm tired, which recovering from all the treatments that I've had to keep cancer away and different medications I'm on now, I'm still recovering. And so, yeah, I'm guilty of being on my phone. I know that when I'm on my phone, it's because I'm tired and I mindlessly scroll. And so she reminded me of a couple books. One of them's called it's called Digital Minimalism. So I'm going to check that out for Audible for when I'm in the drive, the pickup car line at school. And then the
Yeah.
other one's called Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence. Um, and so and then she just listened to Deep Work, which is another one talking about how when we're just distracted for a few minutes on our phone,
Yeah.
right? That then when we go back to a task, we are so much less potent
Yeah.
and less like focused. And I feel like we have a whole society right now, people where, oh, like, well, I need to be on my phone for my business and social media. But to be honest, I get sucked in, even though that's my reasoning. I don't need to be on there for I probably could do everything I needed to do in like what, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's also so many tools for business owners to create posts, right? And do all of that. You don't even need to be on your phone every day,
Yeah.
like all that stuff. So I think sometimes I use personally the excuse of like, oh, I need to be on there for my business. And then how many times am I not really on? So just being honest with myself. And so yesterday was like my first day of kind of the detox from the phone. And I
Yeah.
really kind of shocked with how many times I wanted to go like just check into
Just
Instagram real quick and then put it down and then check it. And I just was like, it was almost like a sugar addict wanting to go to get that dopamine
Well,
hit,
it's the
right?
dopamine. Yeah, I've got a
Yeah.
great app for you. It's called Clear Space.
Okay.
And I paid for it in the end. I used it for one app, TikTok, because same thing, right? Like, I don't care that I'm 42. Like, it is addicting. They know how to
Yes.
get you, right? And so I downloaded it. You can use it for free on one app. And I used it for a few months and it dramatically lowered my use. And even that habit of picking up to check.
Yes.
So I paid the $50, so I have it on Instagram and TikTok now. And you set like intentions, like so I get 4 times a day. I can go on up to 90 minutes. And I have pushed the 90 minutes more than 5 minutes because usually I'm making content and it does take me more than 10 minutes. But I do not ever pick up my phone now just to check. And it's got
Yes.
rid of that habit. And it's because my husband kind of had to go at me like, you paid $50 for that? Best $50 I've ever spent in my life. And I keep telling him, put it on your phone because he has one social media app that he's addicted to. And it just gets that habit off. It's the best thing. And I think it's so important because it is that they watch us. Our kids are
Yeah.
watching us. We
And then,
we set limits for them, and then there we are like like picking up our phones all the time. And I know from my research and education of early education, they do as you do, not as you say.
yes, yes.
So I keep saying to my husband, I was like, I'm not going to get mad at them when they're 16 and they can't put their phones down because they've literally watched us. So we have to change.
You have to model it. Yes,
Hmm.
yes. I value like carving out time for specific things, I think is really helpful for me. So like in the evenings on Mondays and Wednesdays, it's my older two go to soccer practice. And so it's my one-on-one time with my Jamesies, my baby, my 5-year-old. And so I really try to be intentional with putting my phone away, just
Yeah.
letting it play music. We will do a dance party, we jump on the trampoline, we'll do very just like quality time. You can see it just fills his cup, he just feels
Yeah.
like that, and he's like, we're gonna do date time, right, mom? And we do our our fizzy waters and we do our special things. And then for me, I really like having time carved out for, like I said, my workouts and my work. Like I go to work and they come back, and when I'm home, I'm not besides getting on stupid Instagram or whatever, right, to choose some content, which I'm, like I said, I'm really being more intentional about. I like having those carved out times specifically for things. So when
Yeah.
that's over, it's like, okay, I'm switching gears, as opposed to trying to do it all the time. I don't know if that's probably helpful for you too, right? You probably do the same thing, right? Similar.
Do I? I've kind of just let go of all that. There's like a funny reel that my friend sent me, and then I I posted it on my stories, and it's this guy who's like talking about all the things that you have to do to like live this perfect life, and I was just myself
It's the
laughing.
perfect life.
Right. And so I've kind of given up on that. I don't have I need accountability, right? So I have to find spaces that I pay people money to do the things I can do for free at home.
Yes.
And I've just
Yeah.
recognized that about myself. So
Yeah.
like I
Like a
have a breath
virtual
work
assistant.
session today. I could do breath work at home easily for free, and I don't. So I know it's important. I could do yoga for free at home. I don't. So I go to a studio. So
Yeah.
those like just knowing who you are and how you operate, if you're someone who has that self-motivation to do the 5 a.m. mornings and write and journal and do this and do the yoga all before the kids wake up, like good on you. Like I just gave up on that because it almost
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough for that. So I have my
Yes.
things. I
Yes.
definitely know that I'm someone who moves forward and commits, but I've noticed it's in my own special way and in my own special time. And that's what you got to figure out for yourself. How can you show up for yourself consistently? What does that look like for you? And if it doesn't match with the guru's 5, a.m. wake up call, that's okay as long as you know you're showing up for yourself. And then when you're not and you want to be showing up for yourself more, that's when it's like unpacking, why am I procrastinating? Why am I self-sabotaging? Why am I not showing up for myself in a way that I know is going to get me to my ultimate goal? And there's usually some kind of BS behind it.
Yes, there
Yeah.
is. I'm really aware of that too. I think for me, the trigger for procrastination is like that perfectionism of like you want it to be somehow your mind thinks it has to be this perfect thing, and so then you just end up procrastinating more.
Yeah.
So I'm really aware of that now. I used to do that a lot more, and now it's just like, okay, what can I do in this moment to move myself forward? Which and we're none of us are going to be perfect with that, and that's not the goal, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really great.
What's
Yeah.
been the most interesting part for you in this journey to because, you know, I knew you before your cancer journey, and my mind was always blown at your level of articulation of the knowledge of the human body. Like it was like always just like I was like, oh, I'm not worthy. But then I also saw as someone as my special gift to see the holes and the BS in people and seeing the perfectionism. You have the knowledge, but you're not taking the action to do this with it. And, that kind of whole freeze.
Yes, yes.
Moving through your journey, what was the biggest aha moment, if there was, of realizing that you have this perfectionism in the sense of like you can have all the knowledge in the whole wide world, but if you don't take action with that knowledge, it becomes useless.
It's interesting. Yes, I'm an Asian medicine practitioner with like almost 11 years of experience, and I started school in 2006. I constantly love to read and research. I like to be the expert at what I do. I just did a human design. I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but I
Yep.
just had like this lady do my human design, and which I always find fascinating. And she was like, "You are meant to be the expert at whatever you do." And a lot of the things that I did in human design was like, it was just such a confirmation,
Yeah.
like it resonated so much. It was like, oh, she's like, you're an empath and you're meant to be the expert. And so you want to know everything about, whatever you're presenting, but you also need to let go of when you don't know every little single thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so just embracing that, like, I know a lot. And I love coaching and teaching and storytelling and all of that. But I think for me, when I was reading, again, we're talking about social media, I was reading somebody's response to somebody posting on cancer on Instagram, and they were like, what thing about your diagnosis, or what would you have done sooner, or what would you have done differently, or whatever, what was like an aha moment? And somebody posted on there, I wish I would have taken my mental health more seriously. And as soon as I saw that little thing, I was like, oh my gosh, because I was like, what is the root of this cancer? Like what? Like I don't use, like I use like castor oil on my face, I don't use vinegar for cleaning. Like I'm aware of all these potential pitfalls of like environmental exposures. Like my master bedroom is being painted right now with like no VOC paints, like I'm like, I was raised naturally. I was raised with like all the, not taking Western medicine and all these things. So like I'm aware of how the body heals. When I read that, it just struck a chord with me that like motherhood for me, I always wanted to be a mother, but I think it was harder than I maybe would have expected as far as the sleep deprivation. Like I did get depressed after each baby, and I don't think I really got a lot of help for that. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that there was a lot of shame around being depressed and mental health, and I think it came from um, maybe societal thoughts about that. But also one time I told my mom when I was finished with college, or came home from a college break, and I was like, I think I'm depressed. And she was like, oh, I've never been depressed a day in my life. And then it just like the conversation just shut out. And I love my mom dearly, and I don't hold like grudges, or like, you know what I'm saying? I let things
Mhm.
go. But I think in that moment, what that taught me was that, first of all, you should feel bad, or you should not feel like you're ever depressed. Like maybe you should never feel depressed. And that if you do feel depressed, that we're not going to talk about it.
Mhm.
There's going to be no support for you. So you're just going to have to, you shouldn't feel that way. And then we're not going to talk about it. And so I think like being newly married, I don't think I had it, being like a quiet child and kind of introverted. I don't think I had a lot of the skills to talk about emotions. So when I would feel difficult emotions postpartum or whatever, and hormones are going like this, and I just also recently found out that I have the MTHFR gene, which is like more propensity to some, to maybe depression. And so I just didn't understand what to do in those moments, and I would shut down. I would sometimes shut down for like a whole weekend and cry and like not know how to express. And now that I know more about, like, I think one of the things that drew me to Asian medicine is that they look at mind, body, spirit, and they see emotion as being a cause for disease,
Mhm.
whereas the Western medicine, not necessarily so.
Yeah.
And so even though I knew that emotions can be the root cause of disease, I didn't know how to help myself in those moments when I would shut down and cry. And my husband didn't know what to do. He's like, I don't know. And then I would just be locked up in my room, kind of just like in a freeze mode, really.
Yeah.
It would have been better if I would have known that, like, oh, I should call a friend and not be ashamed of how I'm feeling. And I should get out for a walk and ask for help. I just didn't have the tools.
Yeah.
So I would say, and I know now that depression can lead to a host of diseases because your immune system is listening. Your immune system, your immune function gets shut down with depression. So yeah, not being afraid to talk about, like if you're a mom or anybody, talking about like getting help, going to counseling, looking at different types of therapies and natural medicine and adaptogens and things that can help you. So yeah, I'm much more quick to take time for myself and address my mental health. And even though I've just gone through a cancer journey, I could say that I'm more balanced and happy today,
Yeah.
because how to identify triggers of when I'm feeling in a complicated emotion and how to express that and what to do about it, and not feel judgment about having any sort of feelings of when you feel down or whatever, not feeling bad about it, just accepting it as a normal part of life. We're all going to go through hard times and accept some acceptance and then figuring out how to work through that. So
Yeah, God, I feel like almost like every woman on the planet can, resonate with that. There's very few of us in our 40s, 30s that were raised with this conscious awareness, even just like a little bit, right? It was very much shove it down, don't talk about it. I used to be told Wendy the whiner's not invited, crying's not, big girls don't cry. So I was really taught at a very young age to just shut that down. And I absolutely believe, even though my fertility journey, which was the big punch in the face for me, was a very physical journey. I had leaky gut, right? Feel like you fix your gut, my issue went away. But that did come with a level of having to get into the mindset and the emotional part of, why am I like so like high strung? Why am I always like thinking about negative situations that are literally never going to happen? Ruminating in your head and making up these stories. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. All that kind of stuff. And then just always seeking your worth out of more studies, another job, a side hustle. I mean, I have crappy laundry right here. I've got dishes in the sink. Like, I don't think my husband always approves of my new, like, chilled out, because he's like, this would have stressed me out 5, 10 years ago. And I would have waken up early and get it all done. And even like when my kids were babies, I like, oh, I gotta go. Everything has to be perfect. And now I'm like, nope, not even worth the mental stress. That
yeah,
laundry will get folded. It will. I'll do it. The
yes,
dishes will be done. I will do them.
yes.
And that kind of surrender for a woman in this modern age is so liberating. And it's almost kind of like the opposite of like what the feminist like movement was like, you can do it all and you can do it better. I'm like, no, I fucking can't. Nope. No, I don't
Kind
want
of don't
any
like
of
what it
that.
did for us because now it's like now you can work, you're expected to work and be a mother and do all the stuff. And it's like, wait, did that help us? You know?
Well, and our responsibilities are so much more because we're not living in communities. I think about it all the time. I'm like, 100, 200 years ago, you would be in a community and you would share tasks. It wasn't always you doing the same 100 tasks. And even though we're living in a society that has more modern convenience than we know about in any other time, um, we're the most stressed out. All right, guys, we are going to pretend like it's 1992 and we are going to pause this episode. It's to be continued. This is called anticipation. If you have not felt this in a really long time, you're welcome. I think it's a feeling that we all need to bring back into our lives. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And thank you once again for tuning in and looking forward to continuing this conversation on the next episode. Thank you so much again for joining us here on Choices. You can go ahead and leave a 5-star review because we're all friends here. But if you really want to move the conversation forward, please connect with us on our social media accounts, which you can find the links below. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time here on Choices.